Hello everybody, Argent here with a breakdown and analysis of the second Democratic debate. Now, I'm just going to say up front that I missed about half of it because I didn't realize the debate was only on CNN. I thought it would also be streamed on like YouTube, be it CNN or MSNBC or someone else's YouTube channel. So I missed the first half. So I'm just going right to the second half. So the first thing I noticed just when I started watching it is they were a lot more moderate this time. A lot of the extreme radicalism we saw in the first debate just seemed to be absent. People were not taking nearly as radical a position on open borders. I don't even really think on gun control the rhetoric was as strong. And maybe they did it at the beginning, but I didn't see anyone speaking in Spanish during this debate. Everyone was largely more subdued with the exception of Bernie Sanders. I thought this was, as far as I guess kind of civility goes, this was probably the best debate so far, and that's kind of why it was the most boringest one. But I felt like a lot of them were attacking some of the more radical candidates, particularly the former governor of Montana, who's probably a conservative Democrat. I don't know a ton about him, but he seemed like kind of a conservative Democrat. And Tim Ryan were kind of there to moderate the influence of the others, but in general people seem to be going after Bernie a bit and going after Elizabeth a bit for just being too radical on these issues. So I think that's interesting considering the freak show we saw at the beginning. So who are the winners and who are the losers? Now, as I've said, the person who's continually impressed me the most during this entire debate series is probably Tim Ryan. Honestly, I don't think he said anything, at least economically, that I've disagreed with. I think people were too hard on him when he was talking to Tulsi Gabbard, because people were calling him a neocon, and people were saying like that Tulsi Gabbard schooled him or something like that. But if you listen to what he actually said, he said, I would prefer if we could disengage from all this foreign stuff we're involved in, and we could just kind of retreat back to America and stop spending and spend those resources on stuff here. But I don't know if we can realistically leave Afghanistan at the moment, because it'll turn into a narco state or a terrorist state, which I think is fair. Like even my friend Serp, who's very, very isolationist, has said he doesn't realistically think that we can leave Afghanistan. So I don't think it was a neocon position. I think it was just his interpretation of reality position. So he had a couple really good points. The first one is they were talking about global warming, and they're talking about getting rid of gas guzzling cars by 2040 and setting up these dates and all this kind of stuff. And he just says, look guys, we can't go to American like blue collar workers and say we're going to axe the entire car industry by this date and give them an ultimatum. What we need to do is just focus as a society. We aren't going to have a specific date on trying to develop green industry in America. He's like, rather than buying this stuff from China, we need to build up American industry, create good paying unionized jobs, and the money will stay in America, and we can use the industry to build these things ourselves, which makes a lot of sense to me. It makes economic sense and environmental sense and political sense. And he was also pointing out, as kind of like a shrewd part of it, a lot of those jobs will be unionized, and that'll help them politically. But no one really responded to that. Instead, people just yelled about the climate is dying and we have to do something. I think somebody said, I met some kid, and the kid said, why aren't you doing anything about the climate? So we have to do something about the climate because some random kid said it. And I'm like, but kids say all kinds of, like, I hate that. And this kind of goes back to the video I did a couple days ago where I talked about the inability of people to separate the meta issue from the tiny issue. So literally they'll be like, oh, I knew this one person this one kid who said we need to do something about global warming, and because of that we have to completely change our entire society. And to a lot of people that's convincing, and they'll go, okay, some kid said something, because they aren't capable of separating the individual from society. Even if everyone else in society is against it, they'll still support it because that one person said it. And the whole night was just that. So I'd say probably the biggest winner, the problem with Tim Ryan though is he said something that was kind of like the third rail of Democratic politics. He said he didn't support getting rid of illegal immigration as a crime, and giving free health care to illegal immigrants, or subsidized health care. He said, look, if we have people in the US who don't have health care, we should be giving them health care before we should give it to illegals. Also, if Americans have to pay for health care, illegals should have to pay for health care too. And that was a big no-no, because saying that America should be for Americans and it should see to American citizens first is racism, even though that includes like Black Americans and Hispanic Americans who don't have health care. That doesn't matter. The people who cross the border deserve these things, but Americans don't. And then they were talking about like the healthcare plan, and none of them have any idea like really what they're doing. Bernie wants complete nationalization, which personally I think makes more sense than a lot of the other ones. The issue with a lot of these policies is the same issue you had with Obamacare, where they want to add all this extra shit onto the system but not like fundamentally change it. So it's just going to be kind of the worst of all worlds. I think America in a lot of ways has the worst healthcare system, because if it was like more private and companies could compete across state lines and it was more competitive, I think that would drive down costs and improve service. My understanding is a lot of companies have a de facto monopoly within their respective states, and the government gives them all kinds of money, and it's just a mess. And if they had public insurance, that would be better, because then the government could control costs more. So they were talking about that, and once again, Tim Ryan, I think it was Beto O'Rourke, or there's a couple of the other guys that said, look, we can't go to unionized workers who haven't gotten a pay raise in a long time. The only thing they really have that's good is their healthcare. They have great healthcare plans. And you're going to go to them and you're going to say, we're going to take your healthcare away and we're going to give you something else that probably is going to be worse. And like, regardless of whether or not it's something they necessarily have to do in the long time to move towards single payer, it does make sense. It's politically irrelevant. I mean, I think as far as electability goes, and Tim Ryan's not going to win because he said he didn't want to give illegal immigrants health care above American citizens. But he's probably the most electable because basically what the Dems need to do is win the Midwest Rust Belt states and get just enough of the white working class and unionized workers back on their side to flip those states. And I think his policies, he'd at least divide Trump's base enough that they'd be able to win. So I think, though, the biggest winner, though, was Bernie, and continues to be Bernie. Bernie, even if he is incoherent talking, he's at least fairly charismatic. He can at least, he's loud, he's high energy. I'm pretty sure he's probably on meth or cocaine or something. But he's at least very high energy, which is good. The worst person, the person who did the worst was Elizabeth Warren. She continues to suck. She's just so boring. She sounds like my grandmother, and not in a good way. She sounds like she's like gonna die next week. She's just so old and frail, and not in like a good way, not like in the wise old king, just kind of in the just like the supreme boomer, I guess you could call her, the supreme boomer, except older and frailer and more dementia than most boomers. So yeah, I think ultimately Warren did the worst, Bernie did the best from a purely political standpoint. I think Bernie's going to be tough to beat. If I had to say who the finalists will be now, I'd say Bernie Sanders is kind of, to me, the front runner. For Kamala Harris, it depends whether or not she can convince black people that she represents them. I think Cory Booker is kind of maybe the dark horse. But there's not really, aside from Bernie, I think, a clear front runner at the moment. I think Biden's kind of dead in the water after Kamala Harris called him a racist. Maybe Pete, whatever his name is a candidate. And I should maybe just mention him briefly. If the Antichrist is alive today, I think it's him. He's just so slick. He's just so smooth. He just always has an answer for everything. E. Michael Jones wrote a book about him, which is an E. Michael Jones book I might actually read. I honestly think that his gay marriage is just was just done for him to get elected. That he's not actually that. It was solely to be elected and to get the support of certain aspects of the elite. But I'm scared of that dude. He's literally Nicholas Carpathia. He even kind of looks like Nicholas Carpathia, or the actor who played him, just a little. But those are my thoughts on the first of the second round of debates. We'll see how the next one goes, and I'll talk to you guys later.